Wow. What a few weeks. Holy cow. Where do I start? Well, I'll turn down my floaty music. How you doing? It's Dev. So, where am I at? I've caught up on sleep, slightly at least, to the extent that I'm able. I think much of my sleep schedule, and maybe some of you can relate to this, is so I fall asleep quickly, and then I'm asleep for about 3 hours, and then I wake up, and then I go back to sleep for about 2 hours, and then I wake up, and then I sleep for another hour, maybe if I'm lucky another 2 hours, and then I flip around angrily until I decide to give up, and then I get up and start my day. One of the thoughts that I had this week was, since the last time that I put up an update last weekend, I think in the past I've been under the impression that insomnia or lack of sleep for me was based on something maybe different than what it is. I'm starting to come to terms with the fact that the reason why I don't sleep that much is because I love doing what I do. Like, I just love it so much, and I can't wait to do it. Like, all the work that's gone into prepping this and making it ready, and the strategies and everything that goes into trying to get the pieces in place so that I can do the work in the time allotted, and that's, maybe not the funnest part of it. I don't resent building and setting things up. But I realized over the past couple of weeks, shockingly, when I got back into the work, because at first I was like, wow, this is weird. I don't relate to this in the ways that I once did. But once I got past that, I recognized just how much I fucking love it. Just how much I love it. And just how every day I'm just like, man, that's what I want to do. And when I start to get ideas, when the ideas start to present themselves in very overt ways, one of the biggest things that contributes to a lack of sleep is just that the ideas start to ferment and spin, and then it's hard to put it out of my mind. And I certainly do certain things to try to mitigate that, be it meditation or exercise, but sometimes the ideas are stronger than the will. And when I was younger, I could pull an all-nighter, and the next day I would be up and ready to go again. But now, careening towards 50 something, 52 maybe, 52 in May 5th. One all-nighter can just fuck me for a week. So what I've started to realize I need to integrate into this current glut of work and all these ideas that I have that I'm so excited to do is some sort of a strategy for time management. Because not only is there the Moth, Powernerd, Axolotl, Dream Piece, Casualties, Ruby Quaker, podcast, all these other things that are sort of peripherally going on in my work, but there's also aging parents and family and kids and just practicalities of being a human being and having responsibilities. And perhaps when I was younger, it was easier to ignore those responsibilities and just allow that flow and that creative energy to manifest at whatever time and in whichever guise it wanted to come out. But now I've got to be very careful because there's responsibilities. And so, as I think I had mentioned a couple of updates ago, you want to be able to really sink into your creative process. And I had commented at that point that the practicalities of life require a different side of my mind in order to to do the things that are required of me, and that part of my mind was not conducive to creative flow. But I think there's solutions to these things, and one of the solutions that I've been working towards with my current work, and maybe this would work for you if you're in a similar position where you're pulled in so many different directions, and all of these directions are compelling because they're part of your life, right? These are all things that I do, and I, for the most part, want to do them. But when I'm working, what I typically do is I have a video on, like a train video. It's currently playing over there. Or driving, or something innocuous. But I also have set up a button beside my keyboard that in between takes, so I've been recording a lot of music, a lot of different types of music too. I've been doing really heavy stuff, really quiet stuff, really weird stuff, really orchestral stuff, really ambient stuff, really, there's all these different styles. And as I mentioned earlier, when I get into the frame of mind where that creativity starts to clearly want to present itself, it can be very difficult for me to focus on the practicalities of recording, for example, like file management, which folder things are in, remembering the hotkeys for your DAW. And one way to contend with that is what I've spent the past couple of years doing, is setting everything up ergonomically. So in the event that I need that, I've known from the past that this is a tendency that I have. So organizing my workflow in a practical way has been one thing. But when I started getting into it, it's almost like I'm needing to relearn. I started digging into the work, and then I forget everything. I forget where I put my keys, I forget where I put my wallet, I forget how to, which hotkeys, which all these things. And I guess I had maybe on some level made the assumption that that's just how I am, and that's part of the creative mindset, and it's like an affliction in a way, and you just need to learn to deal with it. But I've found some ways to contend with it that have been very practical. So I have a button beside the keyboard, as I was saying, and when I press it, it switches from the interface that is currently running Pro Tools to a music station that just plays quietly, very quietly, at a consistent volume through a very small speaker, music from like the 1910s, 1900s. And what it does is, by immediately switching to that, the part of my brain that is connected to the music that I was just working on isn't distracted by the technical sides of it, and it gets occupied by another sound. And it's almost like a reset. So as soon as I finish, I hit a button and this music starts playing, and then at that point I find it so much easier to say, okay, right, where was I? I was looking for this sample. Which folder is that in? Where was that at? Okay, we have to back this up. At which point do we do this? What's the, any number of these practical things that come along with engineering and producing your own work. If you're not able to relegate the parts of your mind to the appropriate categories, I find that it's just a very inefficient workflow. So finding solutions has been paramount in this past few weeks. And then when I started digging in, a lot of the questions that I had, and I would suspect that those of you who are sort of following this with their own projects and relate to what I'm talking about in terms of mine, you may relate to this thing that I'm about to say as well. In the beginning of these updates, so much of it was the what ifs, thinking about the process and analyzing it and worrying that unless I had it quantified intellectually, there's a real definite chance that it wouldn't appear. But then when you're in the throes of it, I recognize how much of that is just anxiety. Because there's a real confidence that comes from allowing yourself the mental space to be where you're at. and to not question it and to not judge it. There was a line I was writing lyrically for The Moth the other day, and I've just had musicians here, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other, just working on these components. And there was a lyrical component to The Moth that one person said, wow, that's a heavy sentiment. How do you feel about that? And in the past, a reflection on that from somebody whom I knew or respected would give me a pause for thought that would maybe make me think, oh, maybe I'm going in the wrong direction. Maybe this isn't it. But so much of the work that has happened over the past couple of years, like coming out of that, the pandemic and puzzle and light work and all this, so much of the work I realize has yielded a type of personal confidence that I'm shocked I don't second guess it. This person said that about the lyric, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, but that's what I mean to say. That's it. There's no, well, what if and who and why and what if, maybe. It's like, no, I know what I'm doing. And that part of my creative psychology has been developing despite my neurotic best efforts to thwart it. So, The Moth, of course. But the record that I'm doing prior to The Moth, I'm actually putting out a record this year. And I think I'm going to call it Powernerd. Some people like it and some people really don't like that name. They think it's comedic when it's not meant to be. But I think I like it. And the reason why I say I think I like it, not I like it, is because the part of the process that would define what the name is hasn't occurred yet. At a certain point, you're like, oh, that fits or it doesn't, and that's just typical to the writing of a record. But that record's going to happen before any of it, and it's an easy record. It's not a complicated statement. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like somewhere in the epicloud vein, maybe in the addicted vein, even simpler though. And it's been huge fun for me. I always thought it was going to be something that I was going to resent, like, oh God, I got to do this simple record, and don't have to do it, of course, but it seems like there's this music that's being written that warrants its own forum that is going to take energy and resource and whatever. But because The Moth is so demanding on a lot of different levels, it's complex, it's heavy, it's dark, it's like a lot of things that are demanding. When I sat and I started putting together the Powernerd stuff, at first I was almost like embarrassed because I'm like, wow, it's, I want people to hear this Moth thing. It's so epic and glorious and all this. And if the first thing they hear is this Powernerd thing, it's maybe people get the wrong impression. They're thinking, oh, it's that thing that he does, and the old self-deprecating ways start to rear their heads. But I would go from the complexity of The Moth, and then when I started writing and just like documenting the Powernerd stuff, it was so liberating to be like, yeah, that's all I have to do with that. Yeah, it's like, that's cool. It's a cool chorus. Yeah, I don't need to put a ton of keyboards there. Yeah, no, we're not going to put choir on it. It's still got that ethereal thing that I've been doing, mixed with, the thing I do, is kind of somewhere between Metallica and Enya, right? But I think it's awesome, and I didn't expect to think it was awesome. But it's not awesome in the sense of like, oh, this is reinventing the wheel, and this is this statement about this and that and the other thing. It's like a pressure release valve that exists concurrently with The Moth. And by doing it, it allows The Moth to get a bit more breathing room and a bit more time. And I'm surprised that I, so far, I think it's as cool as I do. I think it's super cool. It's not a complicated record. It's not like reinventing the wheel. You've heard me do that sort of thing before, but it's, man, I'm having a great time doing it, actually. And then the rest of it, it's just full speed ahead, you know. Drummers coming in, players coming in, playwrights coming in, animators coming in. And so the next step is to, as I had mentioned earlier, and again, I say this in the hopes that people who are creatives that are paying attention to this series will take some insight from it or inspiration from it even, is the next thing is on Monday. This is kind of how I think in a fairly linear way. I'm going to lay out all the things that a week entails for me. Everything, you know, taking out the garbage on Tuesday, or sleep, or relaxing, or this project, that project, these people coming in, the practicalities of it, and then leaving some, like all these things that are life that currently occupy this big like cluster of knotted wires in my head. But I'm going to put it down and say, oh, this is where your life's at right now. These are the things that you've currently got on your plate. Let's relegate those to times. And by doing that, and even organizing it in the sense of, well, what of these things are elective? What of these things are essential? What of these things are fun? Which of these things are a drag? And then getting perspective on that. I think that if I'm able to make some real objective decisions by seeing it in front of me, that time management can be a lot less daunting, and as a result, a lot more efficient as well. We start filming Ruby Quaker this coming Thursday, and it's freaking awesome. It's so awesome. This is the thing, and I think maybe the biggest takeaway from this week is that the majority of my fatigue, lately at least, stems from a love for what I'm doing. But I've got a lot that I love that I'm doing. And it's a good problem to have. I'm super grateful for it. But it's a lot, right? So, as the 1910 music experiment that helped me turn off or occupy that part of my brain that would otherwise be spinning on a creative idea and compromise my ability to be logical, proved to me, is that there are solutions for these things that at some point perhaps I've considered to be without solution. It's just like, well, that's just my personality, that's just how it goes. Well, starting to recognize that it can be your personality, but there's also things within your personality that maybe I haven't discovered that can contend with that in a new way. So I look forward to seeing if this attempt at time management will yield anything other than frustration. But I'll let you know next week. Hope you're doing well, and good luck with your project, and wish me luck. See ya.